started. Blake, why don't you help us out with prayer before we get going?
Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for our many blessings, Lord. We thank you for the opportunity to come together in a free country, in a free society where we can all express our opinions and express our will. Lord, I thank you for each one that's here today. I thank you that they have a vested interest in our community and a vested interest in what's going on. Lord, I thank you for those that are outside the building today that are training. Lord, I thank you that we have those folks to keep us free, to provide for our safety. Lord, I pray that you will keep them safe today as they train. Father, I pray that you'll give us all wisdom as we do your work here today. Let us go forth in your will. It's in Christ's holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to welcome everybody. If there's any elected officials here, I think Dave Carmichael here, isn't he?
Got Vernon's in the back.
Vernon. Won't you guys stand up where we recognize you? Thank y'all for coming. Yes, babe, appreciate you. All righty, let's get going. Who was the minutes last month?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Who was the financial statement?
Move to adopt.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, Blake, you have fiscal budget versus actual expenditure.
All right, you should have a copy of the spreadsheet on your backup, which has the FY14, which is July 2013 through June 2014. You should have that. If you'll take that out and take a look at it. I've also got it. I'm going to put it up on the wall over here so the folks out here can see if they're interested.
In your way.
All right. I'm not going to hit every one of these line items. This is what you basically have is four columns. You have the first column is expenditures, what we spent over the last 12 months. What you have in the second column is what we budgeted for that cycle. Then you've got the dollars over or under budget. I should put over or under. I just got over, which is a little misleading there. But if it's under budget, it has a negative attached to it. And then percent of budget, which is percent over or under. If it was directly on budget, it'd be 100%. If it's over, it's going to be above 100, less than under budget. So instead of hitting every one of these items, what I'm going to do is hit those that I've marked in blue and red. Those are items where we went either over budget or under budget. So I'm going to hit those and explain those very briefly, just so that everyone knows why those items were over or under. Starting at the top, we had airport rental income. That's the income from the rent of the facility when people come in and use the facility. The only reason I highlighted that really is to show you that the facility is being used a lot. We projected about $1,100 in rental income, and we were at $2,700. So that's 2.5 times what we projected. So this facility is being used a lot, and Junie would be happy to give you a copy of the schedule that shows who's been using the facility if you're interested in seeing who's used it. But it's really everyone from the school board to the fire department. We've had all kinds of training done in the facility over the last 12 months. The next item below that is the fuel flowage. What you'll see is that we were a little bit under on fuel flowage, and that correlates with the reduced traffic that we had during our construction. So as all of you are aware, we did cut back on some rent from the FBO due to the construction that was going on because our traffic was down. So that's reflected in the reduced fuel flowage. Moving on down under expenses, you've got advertising. We were over some on advertising. It's not a lot of dollar amount. It's a lot percentage-wise, but it's not a lot dollar amount. Moving on down below that to airfield maintenance. We were under budget on airfield maintenance, which is good. It just shows that we're being careful about how we spend our maintenance dollars on the airfield. On down below that, marketing and website, we're up some. We did do a revamp on our website this year, as you're all aware. We're very fortunate to have Jason Summereyer heading up our technical committee to revamp our website. So the amount of money that we've spent on that is probably about 1/10 of what it would cost if we had gone outside and hired a consultant to actually do it. So I'm not upset at all about being over on that particular line item. Moving on down to dues and subscriptions, that was up a little bit. I think that was due to some changes in the Georgia Airport Association's fee schedule. So that changed a little bit, so we'll correct that on the next budget. Moving down to insurance, you can see our insurance went up. I don't know if any of you are surprised about that, but we'll make an adjustment in our budget in this coming year to account for the increase in insurance. Going
And
to
that was
page
due a
2.
lot in part to the, coming out and revamping all the buildings and all and reassessing them.
Yeah, we had a complete reassessment, so they came out and reassessed everything from top to bottom. They assigned values to some things that they didn't actually have any values to before. For example, out on the airfield, we have the automated weather observation system out there. Previously, they didn't have any dollar amount associated with the AWOS. So when they came out this time, they were, for whatever reason, a lot more thorough than what they've been in the past, and they assigned a cost to the AWOS, they assigned a cost to the ILS, to the instrument landing system. So they assigned a cost to everything this time, which I guess is appropriate. That's how it should have been done previously, but for whatever reason, they didn't have those items separated out previously in our insurance, and now they are. So it did account for a cost increase in our insurance. Of course, if anything happens to those facilities, we're going to expect them to cover it, so it's appropriate that we're paying for it if we're going to expect them to cover it. So. Page 2 at the top, you've got engineering and surveying. We were over on engineering and surveying. That's due to the account that we opted to pay for some of the engineering services on the runway safety area and on the taxiway. We opted to pay for that ourselves as opposed to having it paid for by the county. So we took on that cost, and therefore we were over on that budget item. Under repairs, you can see we were under budget on all repairs, building repairs, equipment repairs, Clark Creek Path, which is, of course, the home that we own. Under budget on all those, so those are in good shape. And we're taking care of them, so we're not having to spend as much money on repairs. Down under conferences, we did not attend the Georgia Airport Association, or the MBAA conference last year. We opted to skip MBAA last year. It was out in Las Vegas. It was going to be very expensive for us to get there. It was going to be very expensive for us to take our display out there. The members of the Paulding Aerospace Alliance were not planning to attend, so we were going to need to take extra bodies with us in order to be able to cover the show. So, long story short, we didn't attend. So you see a lot of savings there under conferences where we didn't attend. So bottom line, down at total expenses, we were about $7,000 over on expenses. I think that we did a good job with our budget. Again, we opted to pay for some engineering services that we didn't budget at the beginning of last year, and that accounts for the $7,000 over. Last year, I didn't print the numbers out from last year for you, but last year we were about $15,000 under budget. So if you're wondering where the $7,000 came from, it came from the savings that we had basically banked from FY13. So we dipped into those savings and paid for that engineering. Of course, I think it was a perfect thing for us to do. So that is pretty much it as far as the financial report on FY14. Unless you got specific questions on line items, I'll be glad to go into more detail on them.
I got a couple of you for you, please. Airfield maintenance, what kinds of things would that be?
That's replacing light bulbs, it's replacing blown, what are those cards called, Jimmy, the circuit board cards. Every time we get a lightning strike out here, it takes out a circuit board on either a PAPI or a reel or something. So we end up replacing a lot of circuit boards. Also accounts for some of the grass cutting and things like that. So it pays for the electrician to do the weekly review or inspection of all of our ILS and all that. We also have the
Windsocks.
Yep, windsocks, we spend a lot of money on windsocks, I don't know what the problem is, but our windsocks don't last very long. Got something to do with the wind, I guess. We also have TCA under contract to do the monitoring of our ILS, so that if something happens with our ILS, we know it and we can report it. So that's about, I think, $1,000, no, what is it, $900 a month? Does that sound right? I think that's about
$930.
Yeah, it's about $900 a month just for that monitoring, but it's actually required by FAA. It's not an optional item, but we have to do it. So anyways.
I got one more, this,
Yes, sir.
dues and subscriptions. Now, what the
Yes.
heck is that?
It's the Georgia Airport Association. It's where we participate with the Georgia Airport Association. Our airport is a member of Georgia Airport Association, so we pay our dues every year. Georgia Airport Association kind of revamped the way they were doing the dues, and they bumped them up some. They had not been redone in many years, and they needed to restructure it. So we also usually will do a contribution each year for the annual conference, which is in October. So I think we did that as well.
Okay, I'm good. Anybody got any more questions?
Yeah, one other thing. Is
Yes,
this
sir.
the final for?
This is the final for
13-14?
FY14. Yes, so we will have a FY15 budget proposed next month, and if you all remember, we end up doing it late because we have to follow the county. The county doesn't approve their budget until the second week in August, and we really can't appropriately approve our budgets. I guess we could, but we'd end up having to amend it if we did. So we typically in the past have waited for the county to pass their budgets with both the airport and the Industrial Building Authority, and then we approve our budgets the week after that, since our meeting's a week later than theirs. So technically, we operate off of our FY14 budget until we approve the FY15 next month. Any questions on that?
I'm good. Thank you, Blake. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. All righty. Joe here? All right. Is anybody going to be a part of jet setters? Anybody here?
You've got a report
You
in.
got a sheet in here?
I'll run through it real quick. Joe's
All right.
obviously tied up with training today, so. June sales are up 38%, up from May 38% with 2.3 transactions per day. You can see the takeoffs and landings, 130 takeoffs, 130 landings. It's great when those match up, I think. 131 touch and goes and 29 visitors to the ramp. No new comments on AirNav, still maintain a 5-star rating on AirNav. They do have a new tenant in one of the hangars, but they do still have some vacancies in the hangars as well. Joe recently attended Shell's Quality Control Seminar in Stone Mountain, which I think was a 3-day course to get recertified on the operation of the fuel farm, which we require them to do as part of their lease of the fuel farm. So he came back from there, like he always does, with about 50 new ideas of things that he'd like to do. So it's always good to see those guys getting extra training and coming up with new ideas on how to handle things. So any questions on that?
Good. Anybody got any questions on the FBO? Let's move on. Joseph Snyder.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Come on, Joseph.
I'll start with the overrun project. We're currently working with the EPD to update the NOI on that project to account for the additional work that we'll be doing down there. I project that we'll probably start that in about 3 weeks, and so that's where we are with that project. All the erosion control is in good shape. We had them come out yesterday, I believe, or today. They're coming out to fix some silt fence that was full and clean that out. The grass looks really good in both areas of that project, so I think we're in good shape as far as erosion is concerned. The taxiway widening project, we conducted a walkthrough about 3 weeks ago. The engineers did, me and the electrical engineer, along with the contractor, and we got a list, like a 2-page list of minor deficiencies. And so the contractor has been working on that list the last few weeks, and they should be done this week with that. And once that's done, we'll be finished with that project until we can move on to the extension.
What are some of the minor deficiencies?
The edge lights did not have ID tags. Some of the joint sealant at the edges was not done correctly. There was a whole bar stripe that was chipping. There was rocks in the infield. There were a few trenches that were not backfilled correctly, and there was grassing missing in certain areas, so.
Thank you.
No problem. Nothing major. It was all just cosmetic, and contractor type issues. And, I think that's about it for the taxway widening project. If you have any questions. And I do want to say, I know Joe's not here, but many thanks to him and everybody at the Paulding Jet Center for their help during that construction. It was a big help to have them here and guiding us through the schedule of the departures and everything on the airfield. So thank you to them. I wish he was here, but oh well. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate it. Prime contractor.
Yeah, on the construction of the hangar, we're about 95% complete. They're setting transformers today for the electrical, and we still like a few sidewalks around the building, and of course we'll have to wait on the paving of the parking lot till we get the water down to the building. And they're finishing up the sprinkler piping and heads and stuff. And as soon as we get the water down and get the fire pump in, it should be pretty much done. Any questions?
Can we go over and take a tour through it? Can we go through it?
Sure.
Is it okay to do that? All right, you got the doors hung?
Yes, sir. If you see, the windows are in, the glass is in, the storefront doors and windows are in, and have the garage door in, and the hangar doors are in. Yeah. John will be out there.
Set the time with them and get a hard hat.
Yeah.
We've got several more trying to do that.
Sure. All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. All righty. Report from the Youth Science and Technology Center, Aerospace Science Day.
Yeah, I think I sent out an email to all of you, but I just wanted to reiterate how successful the Aerospace Science Day was. West Georgia Youth and Science and Technology Center is one of 10 such centers around the state of Georgia, and the location out of West Georgia covers, of course, Paulding County. And their mission is to assist with educating children in science and technology fields. They do a lot of workshops over the summer, little camps, summer camps and things like that. They also come into the schools and help educate science teachers in the schools with different types of things that they can do with their curriculum and with setting up projects and things like that. This was the first time I've been associated with the Science and Technology Center for about 2 years. This is the first time in that 2 years that they have done a program in Paulding County that was outside of a school setting. And they needed to have about 20 students, 20 kids in order for it to be successful for them, and they had 58. So they were thrilled, and at the end of the day, Steve Rich, who runs the center, said, we really want to come back in the fall and do a bigger program. This was a half-day program. It was about 4 hours. And so he is now planning a full-day program for some time in the fall, and is planning on expanding that and making the Paulding Airport and the Aerospace Day a regular part of their annual programs that they do.
What
So,
ages are we talking about?
it was K through 8th grade, so elementary and middle school children. He did mention that he would like to see if they could set up a program to accommodate older kids as well. It's something that they have not done before. Their emphasis is K through 8. They do occasionally do some stuff at the high schools, but really their emphasis is on K through 8. So, I think that he just enjoyed the day so much that he wants to try to expand it to accommodate others. Also, I think most of you know, Carrie came out and helped that day with some of the presentations and talking to the kids. Also, one of our tenants, George, actually brought his plane out, let the kids walk around the plane so that Carrie could explain to them what all the parts were and how airplanes fly and all that kind of good stuff. And then George went up and did a couple of loops around the track pattern while talking to Carrie on the radio, so the kids could hear him talking to Carrie as he was flying the plane. So they were all ecstatic. They left on cloud 9, and it was just a very successful day. And it's As Calvin has said many times, you know, the intent and purpose of this airport really is to address the needs of the generations to come, not our needs. So I think we sparked a lot of interest in a lot of kids that day, and maybe some of those are going to be FedEx pilots, who knows?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Blake. All righty. Okay, cable. Vote for change of public participation in the union policy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a few meetings ago, you asked me to develop a policy that dealt really with decorum at the meetings. It's really not it's really, and I'll take responsibility for the agenda being inappropriate, it's really not a change to the public participation policy. It's a new policy dealing with decorum at the actual authority meetings. I emailed you all out last night a proposed policy. I'm happy to read it. If you want me to read it, I'll be happy to do that. But it's basically pulled from different jurisdictions nearby us, taking bits and pieces from other jurisdictions. And it's basically common sense. It just tells people what needs to be, how we all need to behave in an authority meeting.
Tom, won't you read it?
All right. In an effort to ensure the efficiency and order of the meetings of the Paulding County Airport Authority, all persons attending said meetings shall abide by the following rules of conduct. Number one, all persons speaking at the meeting must be recognized by the chairperson of the authority. Two, speech that is profane, vulgar, obscene, or which threatens physical violence is prohibited. Three, disruptive speech or actions such as shouting, booing, or hissing, or interrupting a speaker recognized by the chairperson is prohibited. Four, placards, banners, signs, or the distribution of pamphlets, flyers, or other media is prohibited in the meeting room of the authority. Five, cell phones should be turned off or be in a silent position so as not to interfere with the meeting. Six, audio and video recording devices may be used to record the meeting, but should be utilized in a way so as not to interfere with the meeting. And seven, any action that renders the orderly conduct of the meeting unfeasible is prohibited. Persons violating the rules of conduct shall be notified by the chairperson of the violation and asked to refrain from the conduct. If they do not refrain, they may be asked to leave the meeting of the authority and subject to other penalties. And that's it, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty basic.
We've already approved it, so we don't need to vote.
You have not, no, you've not approved it.
We haven't.
I move to approve.
Okay. Second. All in favor? All right, thank you. All right. Okay, approval of the MOA, the memorandum of agreement between us and the Gearing for Paratroops Drop. So, everybody had a chance to look over this and read it? I got one question on page 2 of it. Anybody got it? Under,
It's in your package.
under line item, I guess that would be A, line 2. I need somebody to explain to me what extent that means. Is that on page 2?
Okay.
Section A, subsection, number 2.
It says, Georgia Army National Guard takes full responsibility for any substantial damage during any and all airborne operations conducted at Paulding County Airport. Is that just limited to the airport here, or if they get blown off, they land on cars or land on a building?
The intent is not, doesn't have to do with their equipment or their people. It has to do with our equipment and our airfield. So if they blow into the side of the building and bust the window out, well, they're responsible for repair of the window. So I hope they don't miss that far, but it's just a catch-all phrase that's intended to protect us from any damage that might be done. There's not a lot that they can damage out here. I mean, the odds of them damaging something are pretty slim. But if they were to take off across the airfield in a truck to go pick somebody up who went astray and they ran over one of our taxiway lights, then we would expect them to repair taxiway lighting. So that's all that is.
Well, what happens if they don't land here on this airport, land off airport?
Well, I mean, they're the federal government, so I mean, they operate the same no matter where they go. That doesn't have anything to do with us. I mean, if they were
Their
operating
liability
anywhere-
extends to where they operate. We're dealing only with the liability of the asset that we control.
Right, and it's no different than if they're doing a cross-country flight and lose control of the plane. I mean, it's,
All right, so that's all I had on it. Anybody got any other questions for me?
I'd like to just real briefly state that, this MOA is different than the last one that was done. And, we, of course, said that we needed to do a different MOA for each unit because they all operate differently. So, for example, this MOA doesn't have really anything to do with traffic patterns because all they do, and you can watch them today, of course, all they do is they pick folks up, they go pretty much almost straight up, they drop them out, and they come back down. So they don't go up and fly around the area. They're not flying, they're not flying approaches to the airport. They're just going up, pushing them out the door and coming back down. So it doesn't deal with a lot of the stuff that the last one dealt with because it didn't need to. If that makes sense.
Move to approve the agreement.
Okay, but hold on. Are they gonna use the same drop zone down here?
They're using the drop zone right directly in front of us, so during the break, you can take a look. They've got markers on this end and markers on that end, and they drop between the runway and the taxiway right directly in front of us.
Okay, all right, boy. Sorry about that.
I've got a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? So be it. Okay, Ms. Helms, are you here?
Yes.
Would you have a problem, go ahead right now?
Well, I might want to hear some of the discussion about this before I actually, on the agenda item. The agenda item 11.
Well,
Is that okay?
Well, I'd rather for you to address your issues first
Okay.
before we give a report. And everybody's got the minutes here, I mean, the agenda. We're moving her in front of the DOT. So
Thank you very much. I appreciate the
you have
opportunity.
5 minutes?
Yes, I probably won't take that long. And I know that you're aware, but I just want to restate, just for purposes, is that the Georgia DOT money, again, is taxpayer money, and I know that you're aware of that. But I just want to caution you and understand that for this environmental assessment and the grant that we're getting, that I hope that whoever does that environmental assessment, you choose very, very carefully. There's some endangered species that have been identified in Bluffy Creek. Bluffy Creek feeds Pumpkin Vine Creek, which will eventually flow into the reservoir. And I've noticed that over the years, there's been ongoing environmental work having been done out here. I've got, and I'll talk about that later. But maybe we should have addressed it a little bit more, that's all. So I just want to say thanks again, but when we're doing this and getting this state money, that we do a thorough and we choose very carefully and make sure that we address all of the things. Not just, is it safe out there? I spent 30 years in scouting, so I am very, very close to the environment, and that is also for the future generations, is our environment out here near the airport. So please just be careful. Thanks.
Sam, we'd already have done an environmental survey.
I understand that, but
And because of the actions that's going on here now against our airports, the reason we're having to do another one.
well, I
So I
understand.
realize what you're saying about taxpayers, but we actually shouldn't maybe have to do this again, but, and I appreciate your
Well,
concern.
and regardless, it is being done again. So I just want to make sure that not only do we think about the future of the kids with jobs and whatever the airport does, but our green space, our natural environment is also just as important. So thanks.
Okay, anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. This grant is a grant that is actually funded by the Federal Aviation Administration, but it's coming through the Georgia Department of Transportation. I've explained this before, but I will again, just so if there's folks here who haven't heard it. Up until about 5-6 years ago, all of our grants came directly from the Federal Aviation Administration to us. Back, I guess, around 99 or somewhere around in there, Georgia became what they call a block grant state, which means that the FAA as opposed to issuing grants to all 104 airports in the state of Georgia. The FAA now gives a block of money, a chunk of money, to be administered to the airports through the Georgia Department of Transportation. So in essence, the Georgia Department of Transportation is handling the administrative function of the FAA in administering these grants. So it is federal money, it is FAA money, but it will be administered to us by the Georgia Department of Transportation. This is the funding for the environmental assessment. A couple of things I'll say about that real quick. The scope of the environmental assessment, the way the scope of the environmental assessment is done is our consultant puts together a draft scope for the environmental assessment. That is submitted to the Federal Aviation Administration. They review it, and then they request changes in the scope based on what they would like to see. So we've already gone through about 5 rounds of back and forth with the FAA on the scope of the environmental assessment. Once that is finalized, which was done back in March, I guess, or April, it's put out for public comment so that the public can comment on that scope. And the scope is, again, everything that we're going to do in the environmental assessment. That scope was advertised in the Federal Register for 30 days. The FAA did receive numerous comments and suggestions on the scope, and they then proposed additional changes to the scope, proposed those to us based on the comments that they received from the public. And we've received those comments, and we are incorporating those into the scope of the environmental assessment. So there have been multiple iterations of back and forth with the FAA on what's going to be looked at. We don't decide what's going to be looked at. Our consultant doesn't decide what's going to be looked at. Ultimately, in the end, it is the FAA who determines what's going to be looked at. So that process is just about complete, and we do have to approve the grant prior to executing the contracts for that scope to be executed, for the work to be done. Typically, the county approves the grants. However, the FAA has requested that the county and the airport authority both approve the grant. So what I'm asking you for today is approve the grant from Georgia DOT, which again is a pass-through grant from the FAA, for completion of the environmental assessment. And I do expect that we'll have a contract, hopefully within the next 30 days, to do that work. So this is really the beginning of the process on the environmental assessment.
How long is that assessment going to take?
There's not an answer for that because there are multiple milestones throughout the process where we submit work and to the FAA for review and approval. So it depends on how long it takes FAA to review. It depends on what's found while they're doing their work. So it depends on so many different factors that I can't give you a real good answer. I've been telling folks I think it should be done in about 6 months. I might be overly optimistic. It may take 9 months. It could take a year, depending on what's found. But I think conservatively we're looking at probably 9 months.
And it is coming from the FAA.
Yeah, again, it's the FAA gives this chunk of money to Georgia DOT for Georgia DOT to administer to the airports. So it's, the money technically comes from the FAA, but it is administered by Georgia Department of Transportation.
And why don't you explain?
And unlike many things, it is not an unfunded mandate for local governments. They require it, but they fund it through that channel. So it's not something we have to pay for individually like a lot of things the federal government requires us to do.
That's correct, and I've also stated this many times before, but I do think it's an important point, that the FAA's funding primarily comes from aviation fuel tax and from taxes on airline tickets.
Amen.
So that's
what I was getting at.
it's not funded by your federal income tax. It's funded by the aviation system itself. So I always thought that was a good thing, that the aviation system is actually able to support itself.
Thank you so much. Okay. Get a motion.
Can I, how much is the grant?
How much is what?
The grant?
I don't have a grant amount in here because we haven't finalized that scope yet. We're still working with the last set of comments that they sent back to us based on the public comments. So previously, we were looking at about $165,000, $170,000 grant. That could go up some with these revisions, so I didn't put a dollar amount in here. My best guess is it's still gonna be under 200,000, but I don't wanna put a dollar amount in, and then if we approve 200 and it's 202, then I'd have to come back to you. So if you're okay with it, I'd rather leave it open. Again, the dollar amount's not gonna be determined by us or by our consultant. It's gonna be the FAA has to approve that, so they have final say on it.
Anybody got any more questions?
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, okay, Jim Woodward, saw you back there, come on up, Jim.
We've got Jim Woodward, Offer of Record on Woodward, bond counsel for the Paulding County Airport Authority Revenue Bond issuance. This is Bucky Kimsey as well. He's with Raymond James. He's serving as the Airport Authority's placement agent for the bonds. And basically, what we're presenting today is the second supplemental bond resolution. This approves the final terms of the bond, locks in the interest rates provided by Hamilton State Bank, the bond purchaser. It approves the form of an intergovernmental contract between the county and the Airport Authority, the same contract that was previously approved in September and October of 2013, but basically approves it with these final bond terms included. And also approves a form of a bond placement agreement between the Airport Authority, the county, and Raymond James, the placement agent, basically authorizing Raymond James to go out and sell the bond, or place the bond with Hamilton State Bank based on these terms. But I'm going to turn it over to Bucky Kimsey. He can walk through the bid term sheet that we received yesterday from Hamilton State Bank.
I think Tom Owens is on y'all's agenda. Tom's wife was due to have a baby 2 days ago, and for some reason, he decided to stay with her today instead of coming out here. I was more than happy to stand in for him, but we priced the bonds in the last week. We've been working on selling, placing the bonds. We went back to the original purchaser of the bonds, the Hamilton State Bank, for a couple of reasons. The main one, main two being that they had given us the lowest interest rate, but they had also given us an extraordinary opportunity to pay the bonds back early without any sort of penalty whatsoever. Based on the rate that they gave us, I've calculated that if we have access to any funds from whatever source they come from, FAA or money, additional monies that we happen to have, let's say we pay it off in 3 years, it'll save us over $250,000 in interest expense with no penalty to do that. That was very highly desirable because most of our bond issues have 10-year calls. Well, this is a 10-year bond. We might have had a 7 or 8 year call to refinance it, but I don't think we could have done much better with interest rate. There's no certainty that that would have been the case. 2.35% is the interest rate, fixed for 10 years. They gave us what we refer to as a forward commitment, which means they've given us until August 31st to hold that rate for us. And so we have about 45 days between now and then. And then if for any reason we can't close it, we will we'll have to go back to them or anyone else that's interested in purchasing it and have a dialogue. But I think the most salient points are that we have a very good fixed rate. If the bonds go there to the maturity, we have an opportunity to pay it off early. We have an opportunity to close this anytime between now and August 31st. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to ask.
Good. Good. Thank you so much.
I move to approve the bond documents.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, guys, appreciate you. Thanks for hanging in there with us, too. All right, before we go into closed session, we've got a steering committee that's here today. Some of the members are, and I'd like for you to stand up and introduce yourself if you're here from the steering committee.
I'm Terry Tibbetts.
I'm Gary Malden.
Mark Caffrey.
John Dean.
Cecilia McMicken.
Okay. Thank y'all so much for coming today, participating in this meeting, and thank you for what you're doing for the county. We appreciate you so much. Pays good too, doesn't it? Got good benefits. Okay, thank y'all so much. All right, we need a motion to go into closed session, discuss legal.
I make a motion to go to closed session.
For litigation.
Second.
All in favor?